Yadatra kriyate karma bhagavat paritosanam Jnanadyata dadinam hi bhakti yoga samanvitam. Mataji's. Yadatra kriyate karma bhagavat paritosanam jnanam yatta dadinam hi bhakti yoga samanvitam. Word for word translation: Yat, whatever. Atra, in this life or world. Kriyate, does perform. Karma, work. Bhagavat, unto the personality of Godhead. Paritosanam, satisfaction of. Jnanam, knowledge. Yattat, what is so called. Adinam, dependent. He, certainly. Bhakti yoga, devotional. Samanvitam, dovetailed with Bhakti yoga. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord, and what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Purport: the general and popular notion is that by discharging fruitive work in terms of the direction of the scriptures, one becomes perfectly able to acquire transcendental knowledge for spiritualization. Bhakti yoga is considered by some to be another form of karma, but factually Bhakti yoga is about both karma and jnana. Bhakti yoga is independent of jnana or karma. On the other hand, jnana and karma are dependent on Bhakti yoga. This Kriya yoga or karma yoga, as recommended by Sri Narada to Vyasa, is specifically recommended because the principle is to satisfy the Lord. The Lord does not want His sons, the living beings, to suffer the threefold miseries of life. He desires that all of them come to Him and live with Him. But going back to Godhead means that one must purify himself from mature infections. When work is performed, therefore, to satisfy the Lord, the performer becomes gradually purified from the mature affection. This purification means attainment of spiritual knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is dependent on karma or work done on behalf of the Lord. Other knowledge, being devoid of bhakti yoga or satisfaction of the Lord, cannot lead one back to the kingdom of God, which means that it cannot even offer salvation, as already explained in connection with the stanza, Nishkaryam api achyuta bhava varjitam. The conclusion is that a devotee engaged in the unalloyed service of the Lord, specifically in hearing and chanting of His transcendental glories, becomes simultaneously spiritually enlightened by the divine grace, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnanatimirandhyasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksul Mritam Yena Tasmei Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So, at the moment, we're hearing of Narada's instructions to Srila Vyasadeva. So, as we saw at the start of the chapter, Vyasadeva, he was dissatisfied, even after writing so many different Vedic literatures. And then he asked Narad Muni, his spiritual master, what has he done wrong? And then Vyasadeva, Srila Narad Muni, he starts explaining to Vyasadeva that two reasons. First is that you haven't directly glorified bhakti enough. And the second reason is that you have overemphasized on dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So because of this, you're dissatisfied. So then Narad Muni instructs him to write a literature which just directly glorifies the Supreme Lord. And then Narad Muni, he starts explaining about the glories of bhakti. Narad Muni is explaining how bhakti is permanent, it's a permanent asset. And even if one starts to practice bhakti and falls down for some reason, still there's no loss. Whereas in the other processes of karma and dharma, artha, kama, moksha, it's not permanent. When you die, you don't take anything with you. And it's temporary. So like that, Narad Muni, he gives different reasons glorifying bhakti. And then after that, he starts talking about himself, about his previous life. So he uses himself as an example to glorify bhakti. He gave the story of how previously he was the son of a maidservant, and even though he was born in, materially speaking, a very low family, it's said that one's mature assets are janma, karma, aishwarya, shruta, that if someone is very pious, then in this life he'll get a good birth, he'll get good education, beauty, opulence. But Narad Muni, as the son of a maidservant, he didn't have any of this. He didn't have any education, he didn't go and study in a gurukul. He was born as son of a maidservant, so his birth was low. And he didn't have any opulence, he didn't have any riches or wealth. But despite being born in such a lowly situation, still he attained perfection. And in his next life he became Narad Muni, the greatest devotee. And he was able to do this simply by the process of bhakti. So Narad Muni, by giving this story of himself, how he went from there to one of the greatest devotees by the process of bhakti, he uses that story to glorify bhakti, how powerful this process of devotional service is. And in this way, Narad Muni is trying to get across to Srila Vyasadeva that instead of just speaking about bhakti a little bit and then speaking more about dharma, artha, kama, moksha, just write about bhakti, don't write about anything else. Just write a book which only glorifies bhakti yoga. And now, yesterday and the day before yesterday, Narad Muni was explaining about how in bhakti yoga, one doesn't have to change his activities. The exact same thing he was doing before, he can just spiritualize it by engaging it in Krishna consciousness. So it's not like as devotees we don't do work, we just go sit in the forest and just meditate as in other yoga systems. So the day before yesterday, Narad Muni was saying, oh good soul, there's not a thing applied therapeutically to cure a disease which was cured by the very same thing. So Prabhupada gives an example to help us understand this, that just like if you overindulge in milk products, that creates indigestion and other stomach problems. But that same milk which caused you to get a disease, you can use that same milk in the form of yogurt, and that yogurt becomes a cure for your disease. So in the same way, Prabhupada is saying, all the activities we're doing now, it's creating more and more karma. It's creating another life, another material body in our next life. But if we simply, all these activities we're doing now, if we just simply dovetail it for the pleasure of Krishna, then the same activities, which are the cause of us going to hellish planets, or which are the causes of us going to an animal body in the next life, the same activities can lead us to liberation. So in this way we see how bhakti yoga is very simple. It's not very hard. We don't have to change anything. We just have to change our consciousness. Instead of doing activities for the sake of our own sense gratification, we just have to do it for the sake of pleasure, for the sake or pleasure of Krishna. Another example given in Bhagavatam, 11th canto, is that of bamboo. So the bamboo is actually born from the forest. The bamboo is like a descendant of the forest, Bhagavatam explains. The forest gives birth to the bamboo. But that same bamboo which is born of the forest, during a forest fire, two bamboo sticks, they rub against each other, and then due to the friction, sparks come out, and due to the sparks coming from these bamboo trees, a whole forest gets annihilated. So even though the bamboo is actually born of the forest, that same bamboo is used to destroy the whole forest. So in the same way, Bhagavatam explains that even though this material body that we have, it's born of material nature, and Maya is the cause of our illusion. And even though this body is born of Maya, we can use the same body to destroy Maya. We can use the same body to cut off illusion, to cut off the tree of material existence. So that's the example. It's given in Uddhava Gita, 11th canto of Bhagavatam. In this way, we see how the process of bhakti, it's very simple and very easy. We don't have to go so much out of the way. We don't have to create so many big changes in life. Only thing, whatever we're doing, we just do it for Krishna's pleasure. So it's more of a shift in consciousness rather than on externals. Obviously, there are some things which can never be engaged in Krishna's service, like meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication. So those things we completely refrain from. But other things, if we are able to connect with Krishna and engage in Krishna's service, then it's fine. We don't have to give up those activities. But if there's something we're doing at the moment which we can't dovetail for Krishna's pleasure, then we have to give that up. So whatever is favorable for Krishna consciousness, we accept. Whatever is unfavorable, we reject. So, and now in today's verse, Narad Muni is explaining how in the process of bhakti, everything is done for the satisfaction of Krishna, or pleasure of Krishna. That is the defining principle of bhakti yoga. Whatever work, Narad Muni is saying today, whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called bhakti yoga. So this is Narada Muni's definition of bhakti, that any kind of work we do for satisfaction of Krishna or Krishna's mission, that's called bhakti yoga, or transcendental loving service of the Lord. That's the first thing Narada Muni says, and the second thing Narada Muni says is, and knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. That means that one doesn't have to endeavor separately to acquire knowledge. You just simply practice bhakti, knowledge will automatically come to you. So I thought we'll discuss on this point of how bhakti is superior to the process of karma and jnana. So this is what Prabhupada is talking about today in his purport, majority of the purport. So first thing, we can see how, like there's that verse in second chapter of this canto, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janayati Asaveram Jnanam Chayad Aitukam. That if one is simply engaged in the service of Vasudeva in Bhakti Yoga, then knowledge, jnana and vairagya, they automatically come to him. He doesn't have to endeavor separately. So right from the start of Bhagavatam, it's established that bhakti is superior to both jnana and vairagya. And also karma, as we're reading in today's purport. So if a devotee simply practices bhakti yoga, knowledge, transcendental knowledge will automatically come to him. Even if the devotee is not very well educated, or he doesn't even know how to read, still, Prabhupada explains, Krishna is sitting in his heart, and all knowledge, all remembrance comes from the super soul. Sarva sachaham hridisanivistam matasmritirgana pohanam cha. So Krishna says, as a super soul from within the heart, he gives all knowledge, all intelligence. So even if a devotee is illiterate, he can't read the shastras, still he is considered to be knowledgeable, because Krishna from within the heart will give him transcendental knowledge. And we see that with the example of the illiterate Brahmana. He didn't know how to read Bhagavad Gita. He was illiterate, so he couldn't read. But his spiritual master has asked him, you read Bhagavad Gita every day. And because of his faith in the instruction of his spiritual master, and because of his sincerity to follow the instruction, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he came, everyone used to tease him, that you don't know how to read. What are you doing holding the Gita, trying to read? You're illiterate. What are you doing? So all the smarta brahmanas used to tease him and make fun of him. And then one day Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and he sees this brahmana, and he sees that this illiterate brahmana, he is crying. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes up and asks him, how come you're crying? You can't read and you're holding the Gita in your hand, you don't know how to read, what are you crying about? And then this illiterate brahmana, he says that, no, it's because when I see this picture of Krishna being the charioteer of Arjuna, it just breaks my heart. Krishna is the Supreme Lord, He's the Supreme Master. And just see what kind of humble position Krishna is taking. For the sake of his devotee, he is even willing to become the servant of his devotees. Who can be more merciful than Krishna? Just thinking of this is making me cry, in gratitude of how great and merciful, how kind Krishna is. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears this, he embraces this illiterate brahmana, and he says that you are the actual scholar of Bhagavad Gita. You know the actual conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. So this is such an amazing example in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu establishes that a devotee is considered to have knowledge automatically. It's not that even if he's illiterate, even if he can't read, still Krishna from within his heart, he'll give him realization. And he's considered to be much more greater, much more knowledgeable than all jnanis, all yogis, all other personalities. And it's not, and the example Prabhupada gives is also of Jiva Goswami quite often. So through the history of India, Jiva Goswami, like no other scholar, no other, Vedic scholar can ever compare with Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada says Jiva Goswami wrote more verses than anyone else in the history of India. He wrote so many volumes, hundreds and thousands of verses in Sanskrit and different books, so many he wrote. And he's a bhakti yogi. It's not like he's an impersonalist or a jnani. And all this he wrote actually. So even in our own Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, we see how scholarly so many of our previous acharyas are. And seeing them as an example, we can understand that it's not that one who's a bhakti yogi, he's just a sentimentalist. That's what you'll see many people in India, they'll think that bhakti yogis, that's just for sentimentalists, people who are very weak-hearted, they can't do any austerities, people who are dumb, they can't read shastras, they don't have much intelligence, or for women, low-class shudras, that's the process for them, bhakti yogas for them. But if we look at our previous acharyas and look at all these great Vaishnavas, then we can understand, no, bhakti yoga is actually for the topmost intelligent persons. And 11th Canto Bhagavatam also says, Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Prasanam Yagnai Sankirtanai Praya Jajjante Histu Medasaha. So in this verse, Bhagavatam explains that if one is worshipping Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this verse explains, if anyone is simply chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he's considered as Sumedasaha, which means he's the most intelligent, and no one is more intelligent than him. So even though a devotee, he might not have so much knowledge of the Shastras, he might not be so well educated, but if he's simply engaged in devotional service, if he's simply chanting Hare Krishna, doing devotional service, he should be considered more intelligent than all other, Vedic scholars or jnanis. They might have memorized all of Gita, but according to the conclusion of Bhagavatam, a person who's chanting Hare Krishna, he's considered more intelligent than another person who's not engaged in devotional service. Another point we can analyze bhakti according to the other parts is of like satisfaction or pleasure. So it's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakala Asanta Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Atayava Santa. So this verse explains that Bhukti, which means a mature, one who wants mature enjoyment, Mukti, one who wants liberation, a yogi. All these personalities, they're always unhappy, they're never peaceful, they're always distressed, they never attain peace, they never attain happiness. Whereas a Krishna Bhakta, because he's nishkama, which means because he has no material desires, he is always happy, he's always blissful, and he's always peaceful. So we see with the path of jnanis, like if you look in the examples of all the shastras, you see so many examples of jnanis who became fed up with the path of jnana and took to devotional service. And you see many examples of personalities who are on the path of karma, who are on the path of mature enjoyment, and they become fed up with mature enjoyment and they take to bhakti. But you won't find any examples of a devotee not being happy with bhakti and coming down to jnana or coming down to karma. Maybe temporarily you might see a devotee, he falls down and he gets allured by Maya and comes to mature enjoyment. But then again, in his next life, or even in this life, he again comes back to bhakti yoga. So we can understand logically that through this we can understand that bhakti yoga is higher. It's higher than all other paths. Or else if it was not higher, then why do people from jnana take to bhakti? Why do people from karma take to bhakti? But no one from bhakti, they ever go down to the lower stages, which means it's at the top. It gives a higher taste. That's what Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Param Drisva Nivartate, that this process will give one the higher taste by which one can control all the senses very easily. So, and we see with the jnanis, their destination, the ultimate destination is to merge into Brahman. And it's mentioned in the Shastras that Brahmananda, that the bliss that they get by merging into Brahman, that pleasure is considered to be like 1,000,000 times more than mature happiness. So Jarananda is mature pleasure, pleasure that we get from senses in interaction with sense objects. And Brahmananda, the pleasure of merging into Brahman, is considered to be 1,000,000 times more. But even that Brahmananda doesn't satisfy the soul, so much so that after a while of being merged into Brahman, the soul becomes dissatisfied. And he falls down again from Brahman, and he comes back to the mature world. So that we see again, with Jnanis, they're not satisfied. Temporarily, they may be merged into Brahman, but still, in the time of eternity, they can't stay there for long. They again fall down. They're not happy or satisfied. And we look at the karmis. Their destination is going to the heavenly planets, and even there, they can't enjoy long. And even the pleasure that the karmis enjoy, that's not actual pleasure. Like Prahlad Maharaj, he explains in 7th canto of Bhagavatam, that famous verse, Yan metu adi griya meri sukham hitucham. So in the first line of this verse, Prahlad Maharaj, he explains how mature pleasure is sukham hitucham. Sukham means pleasure, and tucham means very insignificant, very, very small. So first thing Prahlad Maharaj says about mature happiness, mature enjoyment, is that it's very insignificant, very small. It's just something so small. And the second thing he says, Yan metu adi griya meri sukham hitucham kandu yayena kriyaho dukkam hi dukkam. Okay, the second thing he says is dukkam hi dukkam. That first of all, the so-called pleasure that we're enjoying in mature happiness, it's not even significant, it's just so small and tiny. Second thing he says is just misery. Dukkam hi dukkam. He says the word dukkam twice, which means it's just full of suffering. Prahlad Maharaj gives the example of an itch. When you have like a sore on your hand, like an itch, and you keep scratching. And temporarily there's some, like a nice, good feeling, good sensation. And you think that's actual happiness. But all you're doing is making the wound worse. And then soon what will happen? Blood will start coming out. And you're just hurting, harming yourself. So those are the two things Prahlad Maharaj explains. First thing he explains, mature pleasure is very insignificant, tucham. Second thing he explains, actually is just a cause of distress. The more we try and engage in mature happiness, the more we'll succumb, dukkam hi dukkam. And the last thing Prahlad Maharaj explains about mature happiness is manasajam, which means actually mature happiness is just the mental concoction. We're not actually enjoying. It's just all in the mind. Like Ghanshyam Prabhu was giving the example is, in CC it's given that cessation of mature suffering is considered as happiness in this mature world. So from all these examples we see how actually those who are on the path of karma, they might externally seem to be enjoying, but actually they're not enjoying. The so-called happiness they're experiencing is just a mental concoction. And secondly, Prahlad Maharaj explains that happiness is very insignificant compared to spiritual happiness. And third thing, actually, is just a cause of distress. Just like when you're scratching an itch, it seems like, at the moment it feels good. But after a few seconds, you're just making the wound worse and blood starts coming out. So you're just hurting yourself. So in this way, we see both in the path of jnana and in the path of karma, actually neither of them have attained true satisfaction. Neither of them have attained true happiness and bliss. The jnanis, they might go and merge into Brahman, but they're still not happy. They again have to fall down to mature world. Same with the karmis. The best they can get to is the heavenly planets. And even that happiness they're enjoying, Prahlad Maharaj said, is just all illusion, manasajam. And it's not actual happiness, very insignificant compared to spiritual happiness. When only in bhakti does one attain true satisfaction, true happiness, and true bliss. Again, that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakala Asanta, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ata Eva Santa. So only a devotee, he has attained true happiness, true perfection. And another thing we can compare is like the destination, of karma, jnana, and bhakti. The highest destination of one on jnana is he just merges in Brahman. Whereas in karma, highest destination he can get is heavenly planets. And even then, he can't enjoy long. He has to again fall down. Only in bhakti does one get a destination where he can eternally stay and be eternally happy. So they attain the destination jnanis, but they're not happy. Again, they come back down. Same with the karmis. They attain heavenly planets, but they can't stay there for long. Again, they have to come down. So whichever way we analyze, we can always see how bhakti is always superior. Another example I was reading recently in 4th canto of Bhagavatam is of Sati. I found this like very amazing how Prabhupada uses Mother Sati to give an example of how mature life is, it will never lead to satisfaction. Prabhupada explains that just look at Mother Sati. Her father was Daksha, and Daksha is no ordinary person. Daksha is, the Lord Brahma made Daksha the head of all the Prajapatis. So the Prajapatis, they are the great personalities who progenate the universe. So they're the original guys who populate the whole universe. And out of all the Prajapatis, Lord Brahma, he made Daksha as the head. So he's considered as the king of kings, Prabhupada explains. And that was Mother Sati's father. And on the other hand, we have Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva was Mother Sati's husband. So from both sides, we see how her material circumstances was at the top. Her father was the king of all kings, and her husband was none other than Lord Shiva, the principal demigod, the top of all other demigods. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they're considered as the top demigods, and even greater than Brahma is Lord Shiva himself. He's not even in Jiva Tattva. So Prabhupada explains, just look at her circumstances. She had everything from both sides, and whatever she wanted, she could achieve, from either through her husband or through her father. But even after having Lord Shiva as her husband, even after having Daksha as her father, still she was not satisfied. So much so that she committed suicide. So for those of you, if you haven't read 4th canto, the story is there of how Daksha, he was very envious of Lord Shiva, of his son-in-law, and used to always insult Lord Shiva with cruel words. And whenever Mother Sati, she would hear this, it would break her heart because Lord Shiva is her husband. And so much so, Mother Sati, she became so fed up with Daksha, her father, that she just, started blasting at her father, and then she just committed suicide. So Prabhupada gives this example. Just look at her. Her husband was Shiva, and her father was Daksha. You couldn't get anything better than that. The top of the material world. But even after having all of that, still she's not satisfied. So much so that she commits suicide. So Prabhupada says, what's the hope for us? Where do we stand? So in this way, Prabhupada concludes that in this material world, one can never find satisfaction. One can never find happiness. And Prabhupada quotes that verse from Bhagavatam. Atta pumbi dujasheshta vanasana bhagavasana sanustita samsa. Sorry. I think I'm getting the verse mixed up. I'll just find it. This is a... No, this is another... Savai pumsa prodharma yato bhakti rajashe aitukya pratihata yayatma suprasiditi. So this one. So there's like so many verses, second chapter to memorize. I get confused with different ones. So Prabhupada quotes this verse to explain how to actually get true happiness, how to actually get true satisfaction in this world. Not by material activities. Even you can go to the top of the material world, like Mother Sati, but still you won't find happiness through karma. Only way Prabhupada says is by devotional service. And if you do that devotional service without any cause, simply for the pleasure of Krishna, and if you do it uninterruptedly, which means you do it day in, day out, your service, and you do it sincerely for the pleasure of Krishna, then yayatma suprasiditi. Then one will attain actual happiness and actual pleasure. So this is another great wealth of the devotees that, as we were discussing, they have attained actual satisfaction, they have attained actual bliss. That's why, as I was explaining before, you'll never find any example of a bhakti yogi getting attracted to the path of jnana and coming down, or getting attracted to the path of karma. They may temporarily fall down, get allured by Maya, but again they'll come back up to bhakti. Whereas we see so many examples of those in the path of jnana, like Sukadeva Goswami, 4 Kumaras, when they get attracted to, when they see bhakti yoga through the mercy of devotees, they immediately take to the path of bhakti. And we see examples of those who are on the path of karma in mature enjoyment, like Ajamil or other examples we see. when they get attracted to the holy name of the Lord or get attracted to devotion, immediately take up and they never come back down. So even by logic, we can understand that how bhakti is the topmost, because we always see examples of other persons taken to bhakti and being fully satisfied. But we never see a bhakti yogi coming down because of being dissatisfied with devotional service. So that's the first point Prabhupada explains in the purport of how bhakti is beyond karma and jnana. And in the verse it's mentioned how knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. So devotee, he already attains knowledge just by the dint of his bhakti. This one also Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. So in second chapter, Krishna is first using karma kanda. Through karma kanda, Krishna is trying to explain to Arjuna that one of Arjuna's arguments was, if I fight, how will I enjoy? And Krishna, to defeat the argument, he explains through karma kanda philosophy that either you fight, and if you win, then you naturally enjoy the whole kingdom. And if you die, then what's the loss? You will attain the heavenly planets of dying in a religious battle. And then later, Krishna, he switches to talking about buddhi yoga, karma yoga, or bhakti yoga. And Krishna uses that, again, as another example to defeat sinful actions. And when Krishna is talking about buddhi yoga, at one point in second chapter, Krishna says, Trevidya Visaya Veda Nistray Gunya Bhavajana, that Arjuna become transcendental to these Vedas which deal with the three modes of material nature and take up to the path of buddhi yoga and bhakti. And when Arjuna hears this, he could have a doubt that, you ask, before you're saying, no, now you're telling me to give up, the path of the four Vedas, to give up karma kanda, but won't I miss out on something if I don't take to this? And if I take to this other path? Then Krishna, he explains that just as all the purposes of, Krishna gives an example, just like a small well, all the purposes that one can derive from a small well of water is automatically attained with a great reservoir of water. So from a small well of water, you only have so much limited amount of water. And you can use that water to bathe or to cook and different things. But if you just have a whole reservoir of water next to you, then the purpose of the well is automatically fulfilled. Everything's there in the reservoir of water. So in this way, Krishna uses that as an analogy to explain that don't worry, Arjuna, if you take to the path of buddhi yoga, bhakti yoga, you don't miss out on anything. All the other benefits you get in all the other yoga processes, in karma kanda or jnana kanda, all the other benefits from other processes, you'll automatically achieve. And in that purport, Prabhupada quotes another verse from third canto, which Mother Devahuti, she recites to Lord Kapilade. Aho bata sopachato garyan yaji vagre batatanamatuvyam te pustapastu juvis nasarya brahmanuchanama grinantiyete. So in this verse, Mother Devahuti, she's glorifying what Lord Kapilade himself has given to us. She's glorifying bhakti yoga. She's saying, how glorious is this process of devotional service, how glorious is the holy name, that even if a chandala, even if a dog eater, if he just chants the holy name, even just once, if he just chants Hare Krishna, then he should be considered to have taken bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. He should be considered to have studied all the shastras. He should be considered to have done all 5 yagnas, all austerities, all tapasya, given all charity. He should be considered to have done all of these things. So in this way, again, we see the superiority of bhakti. If one is simply engaged in bhakti, one is considered to have derived the benefits of all the other processes. Like jnana, the process of jnana is that one studies the Vedic literatures, one studies the shastras. But in this verse, Mother Devotee is saying, if someone is chanting Hare Krishna, he should be considered to have studied all the shastras. Because the conclusion of shastras takes shelter of Krishna. And in this day and age, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has prescribed this process of taking shelter of Krishna by chanting the holy name Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this way we see how bhakti is superior. And the second thing Prabhupada is explaining, and also this verse explains, is how the definition of bhakti is that you do work for the satisfaction of Krishna. So Yes, that verse Ghanshyam Prabhu is saying that Sam Siddhir Hari Toshanam. So that verse explains that the perfection of an activity, Bhagavatam explains, should be judged by the satisfaction of Krishna. That is the supreme perfection of an activity. So for the KPI for devotees of their devotional service is the satisfaction of either Guru or Krishna. So how to know whether the service we're doing is good or not? Like in material life, they have different KPIs. If you're getting more money, okay, you're more successful. If you're able to get this, and this, you're more successful. They have different key performance indicators. But in spiritual life, Bhagavatam explains that the perfection of your whatever service you're doing, whatever work you're doing, is judged by the satisfaction of Krishna. So externally, it may seem that you have failed, but if Krishna and Guru are pleased with your service, then you're successful. Then you're perfected. So externally, like for example, you might distribute not many books today, but still if the spiritual master is happy with your endeavor, that you went out and you tried so hard to distribute books, then spiritual master is happy, then you're successful. That's perfection. On the other hand, you could be doing externally, or maturely speaking, you could be achieving so many things, but if Krishna is not happy, you're not pleasing other devotees, you're not pleasing Guru, then you're unsuccessful. So that's the way we judge success in Krishna consciousness. So that's the way a devotee judges the result of his service, is through the satisfaction of Krishna or Krishna's devotees. So this is the second thing Prabhupada's explaining in today's purport, how bhakti is done for the pleasure, satisfaction in Krishna. And that's the purpose of yajna. So yajna is any work done for satisfaction in Krishna. Yajna tad karmano anyatra lokayam karma bandhana tad atam karma kontaya. Karma samachara. Yes. So work done for the satisfaction of Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. So Krishna explains this in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, again same thing. And next verse Krishna says, Saha yagna prajashishta puruvacha prajapita anena prasayisyatam esa yoso ista kama book. So in that verse, next verse, Krishna explains how in the beginning of creation, Krishna, he sent forth all different living entities, animals, human beings, demigods. He created all these different living entities. And he blessed them by giving them this process of yajna. And he said that, do thou be happy by performing this sacrifice, by these yajnas. And by this process of yajna, everything desirable for living happily in this life you'll get, plus you'll get liberation. You'll get free from the bondage of material existence. So in this verse, again, Krishna is explaining. So this process of yajna or devotional service, Krishna gave right at the start of creation. So the material world is created for like 2 reasons, Prabhupada explains. First is that, okay, we have this desire to be like Krishna, to enjoy ourselves. So then Krishna creates a separate world for us to be the enjoyer. Second reason, Krishna understands that we can never be happy like this, because this is a abnormal condition for the jiva. So then the second reason for material world is to help us come back to the spiritual world. So for that, Krishna, he gives this process. And by this, not only will we get liberation and come back to the spiritual world, Krishna says, also in this life we will live happily. Everything that we want to be happy and peaceful in this life, we will also attain. And yes, one interesting example of yajna I was reading recently is of King Daksha. So we're hearing today of how one does sacrifice for the pleasure of Vishnu. So that's the main aim, is any sacrifice we do is for the pleasure of Vishnu. And one can misuse this in one sense as well. And that example is given in 4th canto of King Daksha. So just to cut the story short, King Daksha, as I was mentioning before, his daughter was Sati. That was his youngest daughter. And his daughter Sati, he got, Lord Brahma recommended that he marry Sati to Lord Shiva. So very grudgingly, he married his youngest daughter to Lord Shiva. And Daksha, he was always envious of Lord Shiva. He was always thinking, how come he's like this top demigod, even though he doesn't even dress properly, he has no house, and he acts so weird, and he has all these ghost friends, and he does so many different things. How come he gets so much respect and prestige, you know? I'm such a great king, but this guy is higher, he's more elevated than me, and he's considered as the principal demigod. So like this, Daksha, for a long time, he had this enmity towards Lord Shiva, and he was very envious of him. And so then it led to like a big fight, verbal argument, and Daksha ended up offending Lord Shiva. And then later on, he does a sacrifice in which he invites all demigods, different sages, to the sacrifice. And generally, whenever you do a sacrifice, even though the sacrifice is meant to please Vishnu, one is supposed to invite all the demigods, and all the demigods, they take prasad of, you know, the remnants of what has been offered to Vishnu. And that's the process, that all the demigods need to be invited, and especially Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, they're the principal demigods. And if they don't take part in the yajna, then it's not complete. But what Daksha is thinking, he's thinking, actually yajna is meant for the pleasure of Vishnu. So who's this Shiva? You know, I can just neglect him, I can just ignore him. So what I'll do, I won't invite Shiva, because anyway, this sacrifice is meant for pleasure of Vishnu. So as long as I do it for Vishnu's sake, you know, everything will work out, everything will be cool. So this time, when he does this sacrifice, he invites all the demigods except for Lord Shiva. And he doesn't give Lord Shiva his share of the sacrifice. And in this way, he commits an offense at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva. And because of this, later on, he suffers severe consequences. And Prabhupada, he uses this as an example to say that yes, that yajna is meant for the pleasure of Vishnu, or devotional service meant for the pleasure of Vishnu, but one cannot just directly worship Krishna neglecting his devotees. So Prabhupada explains that the demigods, they're all Krishna's devotees. Especially Lord Shiva, he is a pure devotee of the Lord. He is considered the greatest of all devotees. And how can one neglect Krishna's great devotees and go directly to him? That won't work. So Prabhupada explained that's the mistake that Daksha did. He thought, okay, sacrifice for Krishna's pleasure, I'll just worship Krishna directly. I can neglect his devotees. I can neglect Lord Shiva, I don't like him. But that didn't work out so well for him. And in the end, later on, he got his head chopped off. And then his head was taken and burned to ashes. His whole sacrifice completely destroyed. So many demigods, they got their arms chopped off. They all got, you know, hit by different followers of Lord Shiva. So from this, Prabhupada helps us to understand that worshipping Krishna means you have to worship Krishna along with his devotees. So in the Shastras, there's that verse where Krishna is himself saying that one who worships me is not my devotee, one who worships my devotees, he is my devotee. So again, we see the same point of the importance of devotees. We cannot directly worship Krishna, neglecting his devotees. So that's the last thing I was going to mention. Okay, I'll stop here. Is there any questions or comments by anyone? Okay, thank you. Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai, Jai Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.